Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. I'm hoping you guys are having a good day. This video is just very urgent. We are looking at a strong category 5, strong category 4, almost a category 5 hurricane. You can see it's at 145. Anything above 156 is a category 5. It's historic and catastrophic. This is just, it absolutely blew up overnight. I remember yesterday, I looked at this 2 o'clock in the morning, it was at 105, and it just kept increasing beyond anyone's expectations. And it's right now at almost 150 miles per hour, just an absolute beast of a storm. The rainfall looks pretty heavy, but it's really not going to be the rainfall issue that's going to be the main threat for the loss of lives or damaging. Obviously, the rain is just going to be insane, 10 to 15 to 20 inches, that's a lot, right? It's going to cause flooding. But the more intense, the craziest thing, if you will, about this is the storm surge. I mean, 15 to 20 feet of storm surge is just historic. And it could occur at the same time as a high tide. So just really a coincidence of a kind of a series of events leading to one of the worst possible hurricanes to hit the United States. And again, yesterday, if you recall, this was a completely different situation. We were looking at maybe a category 2 hurricane hitting the Louisiana coast, and there was definitely a mention of a major, right? But no one really wanted to say it to panic anyone, but just an absolute potentially catastrophe headed for the Louisiana coast. And let me show you this cone and show you where this is headed. So right now it's literally hours before landfall, most likely early tomorrow in the morning, so probably 2 or 3 o'clock Thursday morning. So maybe 12 to 16 hours. And notice that, again, it will be hitting southwestern Louisiana, kind of the border between Texas and Louisiana. So New Orleans, Houston, they both look to be really avoiding the worst of the storm. Definitely the impacts will be felt, right? Damage will probably be likely. It's just that the worst 140, 150 mile per hour winds will be mainly across Louisiana and Texas, and not really those cities. So that's definitely good news. The good news, I guess, if you could take any good news out of this, let's look at the flash flooding potential. Notice that it's extremely high across portions of southwestern Louisiana. The rain will just be, a lot of rain. There's no way to put it. Just a lot of rain is on its way, and that's obvious. But again, it looks as if the worst part will be the wind, and because of the wind, there will be a high storm surge. But because the wind, the storm surge, peak storm surge coincides with the high tide, it will be even worse than it would have been otherwise. And these are basically the main points. Has rapidly intensified in category 4. It's still intensifying slightly. Catastrophic storm surge. Storm surge can penetrate as much as 30 miles inland. Definitely not out of the question. And then also inland flood risk from just from the heavy rain. And again, hundreds of thousands ordered to evacuate. I mean, this is just a worst case scenario, and you can see that this thing is just barreling down towards Louisiana and Texas. It is at 145 miles per hour sustained at around the eye wall. It is a catastrophe in the making. See hurricane warnings, tropical storm warnings, just really just bad news on its way. And you can see right now 145 miles per hour, and it's expected to reach 150 by tomorrow in the morning, right before landfall. We'll see. It may get into a category 5. I wouldn't say it would, but again, with this storm and how it played out, with so many things going wrong, unexpected, I wouldn't say that it would be out of the question to see a category 5 hurricane. And look at that, 15 to 20 feet right there. It's a relatively smaller area, but 15 to 20 feet is just almost unsurvivable storm surge, and you would just have to evacuate. And here are the wind speeds, the wind gust forecast. For official info, please go to the National Hurricane Center. Widespread power outages, definitely that's going to be a concern. Notice in terms of rainfall, 8 to 12 inches, it says, according to the Weather Channel. It's graphic, but the National Hurricane Center shows a bit more, 15 to 20. Definitely not out of the possibility. But yeah, so just extremely bad news, if you will. Now, I want to show you the wind speed probability map. This basically shows us tropical storm force winds. You can see a large area of 100%. Tropical storm force is higher than 39. Now, if you were to look at hurricane wind speed probability, also a 100% chance, but in a much smaller area. But that's definitely going to be the case, as this is 145 miles per hour. And in order to qualify for a hurricane, it just has to be greater than 74. So definitely a concerning issue going on. And the Storm Prediction Center is also issuing a bit of a tornado threat across the south due to this hurricane. That's definitely going to be the case. Notice we have already showers and storms are erupting across these areas. And it's definitely not too high, right? It's not a moderate or high, but it's enhanced. And I wouldn't be surprised if they may have to bring it up to moderate. And I just want to look at some of the weather models now on Tropical Tidbits and see what the GFS latest models have to say, whether or not it's going to strengthen. You can see right now it's at, I think it's covered up 959. So they're basically maintaining its strength, not necessarily losing or strengthening it. But again, it's still slightly strengthening, and just a lot of bad news really in the past several hours with the updates on this hurricane. Notice, let's go to the European model, ECMWF. This is a highly regarded model. It was pretty good with forecasting Laura. It did show it as a 950 millibars, which that is basically what it is right now. Except the National Hurricane Center, wasn't necessarily buying into that right off the bat. But, some of these models, these hurricane models, were showing a very strong system, and everybody was laughing at them, kind of pointing out how silly they are and how extreme. But, they actually, these hurricane models actually pretty much nailed this storm. And some of them were a bit intense, like they were showing 920 millibars. Yeah, that was a bit overachieved. But, any model that was showing 940, 950 was basically out of the question a couple days ago, and now it's you could see it's just basically it's pretty accurate. I mean, that's what right now Laura is at. If you were to go back to the National Hurricane Center, I want to go back here and just look at the actual storm. We could see that the storm right now is max sustained winds at 145. It is at 27.9 degrees north and 92.8 degrees west. And it is moving fairly quickly. It's not a super speeder, but it's definitely not a stationary, which would be even worse because that would allow for much more rainfall to fall. But you can see that the pressure is at 947, so basically at what these models predicted at. These models were pretty spot on. Now, not all models were accurate. I mean, if you looked at the NAM 3KM, this one I think I saw images on shared on social media. This one was forecasting in 800 millibars, which you can see 920. It most likely won't get that deep. It doesn't seem at this point, but it definitely did show a more intense storm, which was the case, but obviously not as intense as it showed right there. The European model actually still has this storm slightly strengthening. You can see at 934 millibars, and then kind of once it landfalls 940. And right now the storm is at 947, right? 947. So this has potential to reach Category 5 strength right before landfall, which would be just catastrophic. And notice that once it moves inland, it could still be a tropical storm or hurricane very far inland into Arkansas and into Tennessee. Possibly lots of rain, lots of strong wind, and then again it combines with the system up to the north, which provides quite a bit of rain across the east coast, but thankfully it kind of dissipates, if you will. And I know that earlier I saw a couple of indications of a okay, never mind. But yeah, so this storm is just going to be historic, so I'm just kind of out here to give you guys heads up. I mean, if you already, obviously you already know that there is a hurricane coming. I just wanted to give a little bit of information and tell you guys that this is not a weak storm, in case you did not see the latest news. Yeah, yesterday was predicted to be a Category 2. I mean, right now it's a Category 4, almost 5 hurricane. So it's just an absolute beast of a system. And then again, warnings are up. Surface winds, you can see right there. The area of hurricane force winds is relatively small, right? But like, wherever that lines up over land is just absolute destruction. And thankfully, it's not over like New Orleans, which is a very large city. It's over a bit further west, and it's a bit east of Houston. So the big cities got dodged, which is good news, but there's still plenty of people that live here, and again, hundreds of thousands are forced to evacuate. And this is just basically a disaster in the making. And I don't want to use those words, but there's no other way to put it around it. That's not even hyping it up. That's just straight out facts right there. And again, 145 miles per hour moving northwest. I want to look at the satellite imagery of this storm, and notice this is Louisiana, there's Texas, there's New Orleans up there. I want to see if I can move out to give you a better view of this right there. And I mean, from a meteorological aspect or climatological aspect, just hurricane aspect. This thing is just an absolute beauty. I mean, it's just absolutely, it's developed in the most perfect way. The eye wall is absolutely gorgeous. Notice that it's just so well developed. And then it just almost doubled the criteria for rapid intensification. And notice it's just that these storms are flaring up right here. The worst winds right around this eye wall, just an absolute disaster pretty much heading. And yeah, it's been I noticed that there are more now of these black colors, these high top clouds, and this is basically just indicative of the storm is still slightly strengthening. And notice it's getting pretty darn close. That's maybe 50 to 70, 80 miles away from the coast, and moving at 17 miles per hour. It should be making landfall around 2 o'clock in the morning. And before that, it may or may not get to Category 5, but as of now, it is just an absolute it's truly just breathtaking looking at this. And I'm really sorry if this video is a bit I'm lack for words, because I'm just looking at this and couldn't believe that this just developed so quickly, so rapidly. And notice that this thing is just spinning away. It's just beautiful. I mean, the eye wall is just absolutely perfectly formed. And we have we have a bit of a weaker western front right here, not as much outflow, not as much bands of rain, but nonetheless, it's just looking very, very strong. So definitely bad news on its coming in. Pretty much a catastrophe is unfolding. So that's basically it for today's video, guys. And again, go to the National Hurricane Center for best advice and evacuation orders.